So, they are horribly poor. We are rich. Why? What gave us the power to prosper? When America was founded, we were poor as the people in the purple countries. So why did we get rich? Well, they stayed poor. Here to argue about that are Sally James at the Cato Institute and Columbia University professor Marc Lamont Hill. Mark, you're a member of the progressive left, so I cringe to ask you this question, but why do you think America has done well?
I'll give you two reasons. The first one you'll like, the second one you probably won't like so much. The first one is we have a democracy. We have a functional democracy. Everyone has an opportunity to come up with the next big idea, whether it's the internet boom, whether it's hip-hop culture in the 80s, whether it's music. Whatever the thing is, America creates a space for people to prosper. That's why. It's a great country.
All right, but just before you go on, let me break that down. Those are really two things. I mean, a lot of countries with democracy don't have this attitude, go ahead and try.
Right.
That's
a unique
functional
democracy, though. Like you point out, like African countries have functional democracies ostensibly, but they also have often dictators, and they're often underdeveloped by big nations. Which brings me to the second point. America also makes its bones off of exploitation, whether it's giving some people whether it's people not having living wages, whether it's exploitation of third world capital, whether it's slavery at the beginning parts of this country's foundation. All of these things are part of how America stays strong in the global picture. So, it's both things. It's a great opportunity, but it's also all wicked forms of exploitation.
All right, we're together on opportunity, but Sally, exploitation?
Yeah, I agree, of course, with the opportunity. America is rich because this is a land where, by and large, if you work hard, if you have a great idea, you're left alone to pursue that idea, and people will support you. I disagree with the second part of what Mark's saying about exploitation. I'm not sure what he means by it. If I'm free to spend my money how I like, and somebody's free to sell me what they want to sell me, how's that exploitation?
Well,
if everyone is voluntarily exchanging...
One could argue that slavery was a form of exploitation. And
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'm just saying,
we will all concede.
All right, we can agree on that.
Sorry,
okay.
I wasn't... Right.
And many multinational corporations were founded on that.
No, look...
If slavery was so important, how come the South grew just as much after slavery was abolished?
Well, there were still forms of labor exploitation, and not just for black people, for white people as well. Remember, white people catch hell too. You can go to Appalachia right now and find farmers who don't have a living wage, people whose subsidies aren't being supported well enough. Just like corporations, they could take a slight profit loss if it could produce a living wage for a region or for a particular community. And I think that's significant if we're talking about creating prosperity. Because the big ideas that come out of this country, the ideas that make this nation and this economy grow, don't just come from rich people, they come from poor people. And giving them a chance with a living wage, with health care, with housing, with food, these things can provide them with the type of context they need in order to be happy and successful and move America to the next level.
Aren't incentives important? What incentive do they have to move to the next level if they're going to be taxed and regulated out of existence?
They're also... I don't concede the point that they'll be taxed and regulated out of existence. They will have to tighten their belts a little bit. Yes, that multi-billionaire will still be a multi-billionaire, but just a little bit less. That's okay.
Sally, address his point about sweatshops, because just the name conveys a lot. It says we are exploiting people in the third world who are working in sweatshops, horrible places.
Yeah, look, sweatshops don't exist because people don't care about how they live. They exist because that's the only way they see to advance economically.
Are you suggesting... I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
What I'm saying is, if that's the path to development, and America had what we now called sweatshops 100 years ago or 150 years ago, but that's how they got rich, and now we don't have sweatshops anymore.
No, but we had government intervention to stop it. Government intervened and stopped the exploitation of labor. There was a big thing called the Emancipation Proclamation, for example, that stopped people from being exploited, their labor from being exploited.
Stopped slavery, but...
Which is a form of labor exploitation.
Most wage increases came without government. They came from prosperity.
No, but federally mandated minimum wages are another form of government intervention to stop...
They only apply to 5% of the population.
No, but it's not the point. I'm saying that there has to be some form of intervention to stop the most egregious forms of trouble. When you mention sweatshops and say, well, people don't have an alternative, of course they don't have an alternative. That's the point. That's why it's exploitation. You go to people who have no alternative and you give them something when you could give them more. Nike would still function if they paid people twice as much. And paying people twice as much, you make 50 cents an hour, isn't that bad. That's something that we could do right now to raise the quality of living in the areas without compromising the type of growth that you're talking about. Nike's not going to go out of existence. Air Jordan shoes will still exist if they start paying the 5-year-old kids that work in their factories 50 cents instead of 25 cents,
so shouldn't
for example.
Maybe consumers that care about these issues, and there are many of them, maybe they would be free to not buy Nike shoes, to buy another pair of shoes that are made in a factory set up by an entrepreneur, perhaps like someone like you, who just says, look, I've got these standards for my workers. And I would support that if it's voluntary.
But they get priced out of the market because most of these corporations use sweatshop labor. Most of these corporations exploit third world labor. And as a result, there is no safe space to do this. We have to intervene and stop it.
So in other words, it's the consumers who are at fault because they don't demand the sorts of products you think they should be demanding.
I think there's enough blame to go around. I think as consumers, we should be more socially responsible.
We will continue this argument later in the program. I think sweatshops are the alternative to starving in the rice paddy often. I'll say where I'm coming from, but thank you, Marc Lamont Hill and Sally James. Coming up,